Hello, this is Matt from Skybow, and in this video I would like to show you how you can automate your workflows in SharePoint using the Skybow scheduled and triggered actions. There are a couple of options you would have on how to do that, and one for sure is to use buttons on forms or on list views, etc. But that will not be the topic of today. It's just one of the options. That was handled in another webinar, and we will also post the link in the description below afterwards. Here you can find the QR code to watch that recording of that webinar. That is just one option, to have buttons, stuff which is happening on the form itself, but there are more things, more action trigger types, so to say. So if you want to do something in the background on a scheduled basis, then we have a feature called scheduled actions I will show you today. Another one is triggered actions, which is basically on a trigger, which can be on adding, on updating, on list items. And then for sure, what's also a need in the workflow automation is how can I get all this stuff provisioned? So how can I get this from like the test environment to production, etc. These are the three topics for today. And yeah, quickly, let me explain the scheduled action part. So scheduled actions is useful if something needs to be done on a scheduled basis, so like daily, monthly. As you can see in the screenshot, we can also do hourly, weekly, yearly, and we can configure those actions on every list and every library. So it doesn't matter if it's a list or a library. And we can also filter out the items where you want to perform these actions on. Like if you want to execute actions based on a date or on a status, etc., you can configure a filter. And on these items, the ones which return, you can then perform a couple of actions that can be configured. And these actions will always run in the context of these items. So you can access all the values, etc., from these items. And there is also an option to schedule it immediately for testing purposes. So because normally you say it's daily and you want to check it right now, so you can just click on schedule immediately and it will directly run these scheduled actions right away. And last but not least, there is a run history as well. So you can always check in the history tab, what we can see here on the right, what happened, did it succeed, was there an error, and so on. So that's basically what you can do with scheduled action. There are a couple of action types I can show you later on in detail, but so the general goal is this one here. And then next to this, we have one other trigger, the triggered actions. And these, again, the same as scheduled actions, we can configure them on every list and on every library. And you can define an execution condition. So it's a filter, or no, it's not a filter, it's a condition to check if some fields are changed, if a value has a certain status or a certain value, so a status, certain status or something like that. Because the trigger is always triggered once you add an item or update an item or a document. But then you can define a condition if it should execute the actions or not. And one very useful use case is, for example, if you upload documents via drag and drop. So there is no form, no button, nothing, but still you probably want to execute something like notify someone or calculate some fields on some custom fields on the documents, etc. So that's can be very helpful for that purpose. The same here, multiple actions on each item that is being added or changed. And there's also run history. Last but not least, we have the provisioning, and that's one very important point for us, that we are always able to easily provision these things. And all our background actions will automatically come along when you create a package. So we have this package and publish directly integrated into this into Solution Studio. And the thing which is important here is that we have a deployment history for each deployment, because otherwise you could just check the let's say the development side, what was happening there, but once you deploy it somewhere else, all these actions are like copied to the deployment side. You have copies running there, but if you want to check what was going on in this specific site, there is a way to check that in this deployment maintenance panel. I will show you in the demo afterwards, because that's probably something which is not easy to find in the first, if you don't know it. All right, so like always, let me directly jump into the demo and show you how this will look like. For that, I have prepared a contract management solution. So it's basically one of our templates. You can also reuse, and it's all about handling contracts. And for the contracts, very common scenario: create a contract and you have some deadlines, you have some reminders. It's a date field. You want to know when a contract is expiring, or if you can cancel it, etc. Then you want to have a reminder on that specific date. And if we would go ahead, just create a new contract based on our modern form, we can for sure do some calculation in here. So let me say that's an NDA for Alan. What was his name? Alan Steiner, for example. Steiner. It's not yet in here, so let me quickly add this person, Alan Steiner, at tomtoso.com. Toso, that's it, just for now. All right. And it's an non-disclosure agreement. So just some metadata. And over here, we would enter the date, like, okay, that was starting 1st May 1st. It's a yearly contract. And as you can see down here, we will automatically calculate the deadline reminder, which is the date. This is done with our forms possibilities, but now this would just run in the background. And now we need to know on this date that I can cancel it, or because it one month later, I'm able to cancel it. That's one scenario that is configured in that solution. So we have a daily running scheduled action, which checks that field, and also in the combination with a status. So I just want to get notified on active contracts for sure, not cancel ones, etc. And the second thing, which is also in that scenario, is I've used trigger action in my scenario. If I would create a contract and assign an owner, which is not myself. So let me take John, for example. I'm creating that contract not for myself, but for John. Then I also want to inform John about that new contract. And that would be done with a trigger action, because I can check, okay, the contract owner has been changed. So that would also work if you change the contract owner later on. So on an existing contract, and if it's not the same user. So if I create a contract for myself, I don't want to get informed. That's the scenario here. Yeah, basically here some files. I'll just upload this one here. All right, that's it. Save it. Great. So that's just from a user perspective, how it will look like. But the actual magic now for the workflow is happening in the background. And that's what I want to show you in Solution Studio directly. So if we go to Solution Studio, I have my contracts list here. And there's this section, things in the background, where we have these two triggered, scheduled, and triggered actions. And I do have three configured here. One is this deadline reminder. And here, like I said, I have the possibility to filter. And this filter, if you open up that filter, we will see these are the conditions. And my two conditions are the status, so it needs to be active, not something else. And the deadline reminder date, which was calculated in the form, is today. And if that's the case for all these contracts, that will be the filter. We can go to schedule. Here we see when this action should run, daily at 7:48. The start time and start date is only needed if you want to schedule something for the future. But yeah, everything which is in the past doesn't really matter. It's just if you want to schedule it in the future, then that's important. But down here, you see this daily, weekly, etc. You can do multiple, like yearly, always 1st of May, January, April. So we can have multiple starting points. Also here, I can say it's 7, at 10, at 80, at 6 p.m., etc. Personally, I've never used that, to be honest, but yeah, it's quite powerful to do a lot in here. So like this. And then we go to the actions. And here, it's very simple in that case, but it's our action builder, which is also in that other video I mentioned before in detail. We have a couple of actions in here. Yeah, to send an email, probably one of the most common things, but we also can make an HTTP request, yeah, copy, move documents, delete items, etc., etc. We can also have conditions in here and loops. In my scenario, I'm just saying send an email to that person, so the contract owner, and I can easily get the email in our expression builder, which is also covered in another recording. You can also link that below. But basically, I have my contract owner here. If I expand, I see my email, and that's it. I simply double-clicked, and I have the email of the contract owner. And the rest is simple. I have just my subject with a placeholder in here, and then my email itself with a lot of placeholders in there. And this will be sent with a link for me to open the item. That's the reminder part. So that would, if I would run that right now, we quickly check again my list. I should have one, this one here, which has a deadline of today. I created that one before just to show you. That would be exactly today. So if I would go to Solution Studio, here is my history. And this one is the button to schedule it immediately, because that would already be in the morning. So tomorrow it's already over. So, but I can schedule it right now. Yes, I don't need to save. I didn't make the change. So it's executed. If I go to the history, we have a new one, as you can see. And here we can see the whole, all all the items which returned in the that's already the email. I'll show you right away. So that's the item which came back by the filter. And if we go down, we saw, okay, send email. All was correct. If there would be an error, we would see it in red. The error with the error description would be all here. So it was correctly executed. And that's the email, how it would look like. It's really exactly as we defined it in the action. So with the image, all the placeholders in here, and with a link to get to the contract right away. So that's my contract with today's reminder date. And the other thing I was doing, I created a new contract just before for Alan Steiner, where I assigned someone else, not myself. I'm logged in with myself. I created another one for, it's not in my contracts, it's in all. So that was this new one here, Alan Steiner. And I assigned it to John Smith. So on the same list, I also have a trigger action, which is configured to say, okay, notify if the contract has been assigned to a user. And in the trigger section, we can say on added, on updated, and on both. And here I took both because if I create a new contract for someone else, or if I change an existing contract to someone else, then that should both do that action. And again, I'm in the actions. The first thing I drag in like this is a condition control. So this one here. And the condition in here looks complicated, but it's not, because on each field, and as you can see here, we can access all the fields. My condition is if the contract owner is changed, and that's the property we have here, really on every field is changed everywhere. But not only if that has changed, but also if the owner that is now set is not the same, it's not equal to the editor. And the editor is basically the modified by field. Here you see editor. So I'm comparing if the person who created or changed that contract is not the new contract owner. And if that's the case, then send an email to the contract owner saying, hey, there has been a contract assigned to you. Pretty much the same in the email with a link to it and so on. If we go now and check for, let me see, for which one? This one. So here I'm logged in with John, that's the other user, and I can check his email, and that's the email that I just received. So Alan Steiner, I have a link, it's the same. So this one was really triggered based on my add list item. And if we look into the history here as well, we see as well here, that's the one. And here we see the condition was yes. And then for some reasons we had two triggers, but the first one was not true anyway. So this was no, so it did nothing. And the second one is the condition yes, and it sent the mail. And of course, you can do much more than just sending emails. If you go back to scheduled actions again, we see two others. And especially for the contracts, there we need to, for example, we need to update or expire the contract. So let's say we have a contract which expires on a certain date. I don't want to go in the system and set the contract status to expired. That can be done by the system. So that's the one here, expire contract. And the only thing is it also runs daily, but I can then check on the end date. If the end date is today, that's another date which is calculated and it's still active. for that case, all these items, we go and use another list, another action type, update list item. And we simply say update a contract, the current one, so we can pass the ID. And I simply set the status to expired. So very simple one, nothing else. And I'm also sending an email to the contract owner that this contract has expired. So I can also combine these things. I can do more than just one action for sure in here. Yeah, to do that. So those are, of course, quite simple scenarios, but you can do, of course, much more in here. Last but not least, this was all done in my, let's call it dev side. Now, for those who know Skybow, we have the possibility in here to directly make a package and publish it somewhere else. So here I created a new package, really just with this simple wizard, next, and I have my package, which includes everything and also these background actions. And then I published it to another site, even to another tenant. As you can see, I'm now on Skybow tenant, and here I'm on a Skybow demo tenant, and I deployed this solution into that demo tenant, which is, for example, this one here. It looks pretty much the same. The main difference, as you can see, is the color. I changed the color that we see. It's a different system. Here I took green, and that's a darker green. And here as well, we are really on another tenant. I have another contract in here. It's another site. And if I would do the same here, I'm probably wondering if emails are not sent or something is not working. How can I figure out if what's happening? So if we go back to Solution Studio, and for each deployment, I have just one in here right now. I could have more than one. I can have 10, 100 deployments. Doesn't matter. You simply select the deployment, then you see the whole deployment details, where it's deployed, the history, when it was deployed, what has been deployed, etc. And maybe a bit hidden up here is this, what we call the deployment maintenance page. If you click on these two, on this icon, you can see the maintenance page, and down here you see all the configured things with how they are deployed on the target site. So I also have some calculated columns. That's another topic. But down here on the contract list, we see these scheduled actions and the triggered actions. And here I can simply click on each scheduled action, and I can see a history. And here that was just run today, this morning, as you can see, 7:48, like configured. Tomorrow we'll see another run, but there was no item returned. That's why it's just like that. Otherwise, I can also drill down and see the items. If we go down to the trigger action, I also created a new here. I created this car leasing Tesla new contract, and for this, I got this notification because I also created it for someone else, and I can see, okay, so the same history for this one with a link to the item I can see here. And this is now really on the target side. That's the history from the target side. If something's going wrong, always check this history first to make sure maybe something is wrong, maybe some metadata is missing, or yeah, that's what you can check in here. Thanks for joining, and hopefully you have learned how you can easily optimize your workflows in SharePoint.